Our big team case is on Stryker, a medical technologies company. I am David Cohen.
I'm Sarah Pendergast.
I'm Nick Gonzalez.
And I'm Trent McLean. The medical device industry is one of the fastest growing areas in healthcare. Our analysis, which focuses on Stryker, is a Fortune 500 medical technologies firm. A little bit of background on Stryker. It was formed in 1941 by Dr. Homer Stryker when he began selling inventions he had created for his patients. Stryker has been first in several things, such as an oscillating saw, a fully soakable video camera, and global open platform orthopedic navigation.
And on to the external analysis. The U.S. economy's GDP has been at a steady general incline over the past 10 years and is projected to continue to increase. The GDP in the U.S. is expected to exceed $1.8 trillion by the end of this quarter and reach over $20 trillion in 2020. Provided that the projections are correct, this would be very beneficial for the medical technology industry and for Stryker. As the economy grows, consumers are not only more likely to spend, but they are also more likely to invest. Society as a whole becomes more confident in the economy and of new markets. The GDP's annual growth rate in the U.S. has taken a dip in recent years, but is currently on the uprise and is projected to continue to do so. Again, this will benefit the industry and our company greatly if this continues for similar reasons as mentioned before. The Consumer Price Index has increased at a somewhat constant level for the past 10 years. This is beneficial for the industry because it will help guarantee an increase in profits year after year. The U.S. is the largest medical device market in the world and alone represents about 38% of the medical device market globally. The medical device market in the U.S. was approximately $110 billion in 2012 and has experienced continued growth. Of that $110 billion, $44 billion accounted for medical devices that were exported from the U.S. to other countries. Globally, the U.S. is recognized in the medical device industry for their innovative and quality products. Though the U.S. is the primary market for the medical technology industry, there are growing opportunities to expand in other countries as well. The only reliable, prevalent data comes from the U.S., Australia, and Europe. Currently, there are large efforts being made to expand in Asia as well. Other markets with the most potential are the fastest growing economies in the world and include Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. While all healthcare-related matters are dominant in stable regions, Doctors Without Borders goes to these unstable conflict zones and provides medical care to those who are impoverished and can't afford it, who would otherwise not have access. Despite this, overall globalization of the industry is low. Companies in the industry are predominantly small or medium-sized who operate on local, regional, or national levels. Their size and competition from larger companies make it hard for most companies to have a global impact.
There are four main types of technologies coming out that we have identified as key opportunities and threats for the medical technology industry. First up is 3D printing. There are two main types of 3D printing going on. The first is costly, specialized, more complex. This is biological printing. The medium insert are human cells, stem cells, and other nutrients that will eventually produce organs, portions of organs, and human tissue. The idea behind this is it will eventually replace the need for organ transplants, while presently serves as a surgical tool aid to surgeons in complex organ surgeries. The end cost is about $1,000 for a liver lobe or heart valve, significantly reducing the cost of a current organ transplant. The other type of 3D printing going on is more simple. It uses a plastic mold insert. It is simplified, it is standardized, it is functional. We can produce a forearm limb right now for about $15 and have it printed out in 35 minutes. This type of technology can be readily available in rural areas. The next up is smart-powered or brain-computer interface technologies. These are remote or wired connections for communication between a brain and physical devices. Essentially, software is reading brain-amplified waves for mind-controlled devices. It's most applicable in prosthetics. The next type of technology are robotics and nanotechnology. Robotics works really well with prosthetics as they try to incorporate BCI technology. Nanotechnology are very, very small robots who have recently found some success being inserted and stable within the human body to deliver zinc. This is hopeful for in the future that we may one day be able to consume nanobots who will heal the human body from within, eliminating the need for surgeries. The next step are point-of-care diagnostics. These are machines that will eventually replace a majority of what physicians do now. These types of machines can test, they can diagnose, they can detect through body scans and other types of detections that are impersonal and less invasive from today's physician-to-patient interaction. The industry is expected to double to $35 billion from its 2012 prediction all the way up to 2025.
The main political and legal factor affecting the medical device industry today is tentative and upcoming public policy involving healthcare. Changes including universal public healthcare may be imminent. Companies like Stryker must learn to adapt to new regulations and policies such as this public healthcare. Another factor when considering the future of medical technology is the industrialization of the entire globe. The world is advancing quickly, and soon countries that had no need before will require the use of the most modern medical equipment. The World Health Organization states that 34% of countries have a health technology national policy that is part of the National Health Program, and 65% have an authority responsible for implementing and enforcing medical device specific product regulations. The demand for medical equipment will be increasing around the world, and just like in the United States, the status of regulations and policies will greatly affect the strategies and revenue possibilities for medical technology companies.
When we talk about the demographic environment in the medtech industry, we are looking to see who is actually buying and who's actually using these products and services. We've identified two different types of consumers. First up is the end consumer. This only represents 10% of all consumers out there. They are the eventual beneficiary, people like you or me who are receiving the products. They are predominantly in the United States, as well as if you look to the map below on the left, any nation in green provides universal health care to their citizens who have access to this type of medical advancement. If you look to the graph to your right, we see the Doctors Without Borders operations who expand that healthcare coverage into the most rural and impoverished areas of the globe so that they may have access as well. But like I said, they only represent 10% of the total buyer market. Majority is the primary consumers. They represent 90% of the market. These include places like hospitals, distributors, specialty care providers, third-party healthcare providers, and so forth. They have the biggest sums of money, the biggest interest and capabilities of buying large sums of these products. Hospitals control the greatest percentage at 35%, though they are shrinking every day. New research indicates a prevalent amount of infection going around hospitals, as well as they are so large they have too much overhead, and they are gradually shutting down in favor of these smaller specialty facilities who still have an increased amount of buying power. They are able to get these products to every different type of race, gender, creed, and religion. Within the medical technologies industry, the threat of new entrants is relatively low. We want to figure out why that is. Let's take a look at the industry at a glance. We know that 6,500 US firms exist, but there is an unknown amount of international firms. We do know that the top 10 firms control 35% of the total global market. The top 20 firms control 51 to 60% of the global market, depending on which statistic you go off of. The top 3 U.S. firms control 30% of the national market. The reason for this is the barriers to enter are relatively high. A newcomer must be very innovative, but also have some significant startup capital just to get off the ground. There is virtually zero expected retaliation from these existing firms, and that is because they have established a pattern of an acquisitional strategy. In order for the top firms to maintain their dominance and innovation, they have strategized to extend highly lucrative cash buyout offers to these smaller startup companies. They are highly encouraging people to enter the market, knowing how difficult it is. Once they start to pick up some steam, these top firms make this huge cash offer where they can't refuse, and it maintains the dominance that these large firms presently have.
In this industry, buyers are primarily going to be physicians, hospitals, nursing homes, and in some cases, households. The amount of market power a seller has is determined by the amount of protection they have on their patents and by how limited their competition is. Different firms will sell similar devices that have different features, and there are patents that protect some of these features which allow the seller to cover their costs and earn a profit. Buyers often lack the pricing knowledge and also face high switching costs, which also gives the seller market power. Manufacturers will often introduce varying prices to different buyers, and to ensure the amount they charge one company will not affect the expectations another company has about price, they will enforce contracts that do not allow buyers to disclose final pricing of the product or services to anyone not involved in the purchase. Buyers in this market vary significantly, and even similar buyers such as hospitals all have qualities that differ greatly from another that affect what kind of products will be beneficial to them. Overall, there is a large amount of suppliers, but there is also a high demand for quality, innovative products. Because of this, buyer power is moderate.
The rivalry amongst existing firms is relatively high. All of the top firms are competing for international territory expansion, and the first to achieve success through economics of scale. Being a larger firm allows them higher negotiation power with their suppliers related to their size. It also gives them more funds for an acquisitional strategy. There is heavy competition amongst patent infringement for the top firms. As soon as somebody releases a product, everybody jumps on their legal team to make sure no patents are infringed, and if so, legal lawsuits are quick to ensue. The key to success here is to diversify, and much of this is done through an acquisitional strategy. Smaller companies are looking to grow either through in-house innovations or with outside strategic partnerships. Primarily, though, they are really looking to exit the market through a lucrative cash buyout from these stronger top firms who are looking to swallow them up for the purpose of extinguishing competition while expanding their own diversification. If we take a look at the industry structure, we notice a consolidated oligopoly of power on the top 20% of all companies involved in the medical technologies industry. The lower segment is fragmented amongst 80% of all companies who have 50 employees or less. The top companies range between $25 and $50 billion in annual sales. They control 30% of the market. The next tier down is companies that have between $1 and $10 billion in annual sales. They control 15% of the market. Below them are companies with between $100 and $500 million in annual sales. They also control approximately 50% of the market. However, a majority of these companies never reach above $100 million in annual sales. While they represent 80% of the total companies out there, they really only hold 40% of the market. As you can see on this graph, Johnson & Johnson has the largest share with close to 8% of the total market. And if you go down the line, we find Stryker in 8th, controlling close to 3% as of 2016. Through an analysis of Stryker's corporation, we have been able to divulge their value chain. Their primary activity starts with research and development. This is the single most important aspect of both Stryker and anyone really in the medical technologies industry. Recently, Stryker has incorporated an acquisitional strategy that falls under the research and development category. Next is operations, then marketing and sales, outbound logistics, and the service of existing products available to consumers. Together, they hold up and support the secondary activities that make Stryker so valuable. Those include firm infrastructure, human resources, the procurement of raw materials and other resources such as employees, and then technological innovations. Stryker's corporate governance starts with their board of directors. They presently have a very strong and diverse group of directors, with some members remaining on the board for decades. Stryker publicly adheres to keep at least 2/3 of outside directors on at all times. Currently, Kevin Lobo is the only insider board member, with a dual position leading the board as chairman and chief executive officer internally. The strategic leadership at Stryker features 16 upper management executives. Of those 16, 5 of them are considered the key executives who are subject to additional executive compensations. Kevin Lobo holds the single most power at Stryker, leading the board of directors and the company's strategic direction as CEO. Lobo, born in India and raised in Canada, has a strong personal connection to international expansion. Through vertical internal promotions, Lobo has risen from Stryker's lead orthopedics division as president to CEO in 2012, and then additionally becoming chairman of the board in 2014. His mild temperament promotes a listening-first attitude from upper management, and his past employment experience at competitor Johnson & Johnson makes him an ideal candidate to steer Stryker into the future. Lobo is highly regarded for his positions, being recognized as one of the 50 greatest CEOs by Glassdoor in 2015. The other key executives all have unique backgrounds related to the healthcare industry, with a majority of them becoming executives after vertical advancement and multiple years within Stryker. The board of directors gives financial reporting controls to internal upper management. Overall controls and procedures are spearheaded by the CEO, vice president, and CFO. For his dual work as both CEO and chairman of the board, Kevin Lobo received the largest executive compensation sum of $10.4 million last year. Amongst all key executives, Stryker spent over $27.75 million on all compensations. The strong governmental controls are facilitated over 100 different nations, with 12,000 U.S. employees and an additional 10,000 international employees. Stryker works well with their transnational corporate business model as they look to expand further into Asia, their next projected area of expansion. Top management institutes both an induced, top-down approach for behavior that builds on past corporate accomplishments while providing individual employees autonomy to enhance their unique ideas for individual projects, which ultimately helps grow Stryker with a wider foundation. The end results are an admirable corporate culture. Lobo and other executives have established a focus on new product ideas, global expansion, and a strong, stable upper management team who generates the focus-driven corporate culture that retains quality employees who ultimately achieve the growth for Stryker. Though autonomy is provided, a proven track record of results is expected for continued employment. Innovation is anticipated and funds are allocated to make that happen. Fair industry compensation is provided, but often requires unpredictable additional hours to meet the demands of their customers and operations. Pessimism is not tolerated, but leadership is expected. Many employees discover success and achieve long-term employment within the corporate culture, but some obtain culture disruption and are released within the first 6 months. Stryker keeps their initial turnover rate low through a multi-step detailed interview.
Stryker's operation and logistics department are key strengths to their success. Operations at Stryker involves bringing products to the market after research and development approves prototypes for production. This division adequately manages the timely and costly hurdles associated with getting a new product approved by the FDA. Stryker has strategically steered the course of product design that can be cost efficient in comparison to all area of medical developments that must meet the same FDA guidelines and mandatory testing for approval. 3/4 of Stryker's expenditures concentrate on passing FDA standards. When it comes to logistics, Stryker deals with the obstacle that is difficult to anticipate patients' needs in over 120 countries without having high excess over inventory cost. In 2006, Stryker returned to the front end of their supply chain and incorporated vendor-managed inventory. They decided to focus more on their supplies and distribution centers and less on the end customer. Further steps were taken by partnering with TradeBeam and its iSupply inventory management software, which focuses on real-time visibility and single-tool viewing offering. Since using TradeBeam's iSupply solution, they have decreased inventory levels by up to 50% while having a 20% increase in demand.
The single most important primary activity in Stryker's history has been research and development. Research and development to Stryker is the single most expressive form of growth and development for their industry through new and enhanced products. In 2008, Stryker unveiled a new strategy for research and development that would focus on the acquisition of smaller companies. They would then adopt the smaller companies' innovations into their own product lines. That strategy was a smashing success for Stryker, but in 2011 particularly, Stryker really wanted to focus on their own in-house innovations. This was primarily fueled by the FDA's momentary unofficial stance that would give way to companies releasing products faster to the public and decrease the time and costly barriers related to testing of the new product's approval. Basically, the FDA had said, we understand there's lots of new products in the market, and we would rather have them released to the general public and figure out the defects later, as opposed to holding off ways to improve the quality of life for U.S. citizens right now. But as a result, in 2016, we are seeing higher recall rates than normal from products around 2011-2012. Stryker has been noticing an increase in costly recalls from products of those years. One of the two most significant losses affecting them today comes from a hip product recall that recently reached an uncapped settlement of close to $1.5 billion. They also have an outstanding Class 1 recall of the Shape Match Cutting Guide product, which has not settled yet, but is expected to reach an agreement well above the $2 billion mark. Yet still, their total different product recalls number is under 175 over the past 10 years, and this recent one, being the only Class 1 recall, is a considerably lower rate than the industry standard by comparable companies of their size. Medtronic, for example, one of Stryker's most comparable competitors, presently has 15 significant lawsuits outstanding in just their past 3 years. The acquisitional strategy for Stryker comes with its own unique budget within research and development. Acquisitions is given approximately 1/3 of the past year's sales for the option. Sometimes Stryker adheres to that 1/3, sometimes they go significantly less, but they have shown that they're willing to go even above that 1/3 amount if they find the right opportunity. Research and development has its own budget, which is just over 6% of last year's sales, significantly lower than the acquisitional amount. The way that they work together in a cohesive divisional relationship is that research and development gets the credit for introducing so many new products under the Stryker banner that it helps the company grow vertically, and thus more weight and credit goes to research and development, even though it really came from the acquisitional company. It has worked out, though, with smashing success. Evaluated by the number of products, the number of patents, and total sales, Stryker is a company that has been around since 1941, doubled in just the last 10 years thanks to this new strategy.
Marketing and sales is a division that near every company wished was stronger industry-wide, and Stryker and the medical technologies industry is no different. Positively, their sales and global market reach are stronger than ever to date. The MedSurg and Neurology division is growing at the fastest rate. MedSurg division represents 37% of total sales, and they have the highest growth of any Stryker division at 10.8% over the past fiscal year. The key areas of surgical equipment, navigation, neurospine and ENT, and interventional spine combined for $1.8 billion in total sales over the 2014 to 2015 fiscal year. Stryker acts as the second largest market shareholder in orthopedics with 13%. The single industry leader is Johnson & Johnson with 21%, though their MedTech division is approximately 3 times larger than Stryker's, according to a 2014 report. We see an increase in growth in sales important to recent history, with the 2013 to 2014 fiscal year achieving $9 billion in revenue, the 2014 to 2015 fiscal year achieving $9.8 billion in revenue, and the 2015 to 2016 fiscal year achieving $9.95 billion in revenue. Through marketing and sales efforts, Stryker has put themselves in a comfortable financial standpoint. It is estimated that Stryker holds $4.3 billion in cash and cash equivalents and carried $3.5 billion in debt as of March 31, 2015. In 2013, Stryker generated $2.2 billion in free cash flow. With increased productivity, sales, market expansion, and overall intelligent business decisions, this capital holding will continue to increase even more.
Stryker has always been able to maintain their strong public image through exceptional human resource practices. Modern achievements represent the success in this department with awards such as the Excellence Through People Award in 2005, an Irish award recognizing HR development supported by employees, trade unions, and government. A more recent award, in 2008, Stryker was recognized as an admired company for human resources. This year, they have already ranked number 33 on the Hayes Group list of the top 50 companies most admired for human resources. Stryker creates value in their ability to maintain their strong public image and attract top-tier employees. But in recent years, the medical device industry has been struggling to find capable American talent. One way to combat this, Stryker has just hired a new Vice President of Global Human Resources in 2012, Stephen Biscotter. His responsibilities cover all HR policies, practices, planning, and direction and activities. His direct initiatives have improved the public image of Stryker's corporation's human resource practices.
Other key tangible resources for Stryker are found in the products themselves, particularly their function and reliability. Stryker has close to 60,000 different products out there, 5,300 international patents that are recognized in 164 different countries. Over the last 10 years, they have had 117 voluntary Class 2 and Class 3 recalls, with only one class recall over the past 10 years. You might think this is high, but competition actually ranges anywhere between 10 and a full 1,000 different recalls over the last 10 years. Intangible resources include employee satisfaction. To work at Stryker, it is a highly rated company who receives numerous awards by Glassdoor and other annual awards that have been continuous since 2002. They have been on Fortune's 400 list since 2013 annually consecutively. They have a corporate focus on integrity, employee engagement, morale, and rewards for achievement that allow for the recruitment of top-tier employees in the industry. They also have excellent customer service, with an international 24-hour call center, and qualifications to work in their customer service division as having dedication, flexible hours, and at least 2 to 3 years of previous work experience.
Next, we're going to talk about problem identification and solutions. Stryker's research and development is on the decline. They are also heavily integrated and dependent on the prosthetics industry, which is changing rapidly. 3D printing is making it easier, quicker, and less costly to produce prosthetics. Global legislation is the biggest threat to the industry. The competitors are not gaining any significant amount of strength in comparison to Stryker. Despite costly lawsuits and acquisitions, spending is not out of control, as Stryker has planned for and budgeted for these transactions to happen. The company is expanding rapidly, but according to our research, it has not been out of foolishness.
Our first recommendation is to significantly increase the R&D budget into technological industries of 3D printing, brain control interface, and robotics. This is for the purpose of prosthetics. Project Daniel in Sudan demonstrates the disappearing bottom of the prosthetics market as simplified 3D printed limbs can be manufactured for $100 in under 6 hours from the most basic and accessible equipment. Les Baugh in the second photograph here represents the trial stages of applying BCI and robotic technology into prosthetics. When 3D printing is meshed in, the costs go down immensely. The biggest drawbacks are the risks of dabbling with experimental technologies and the cost of production associated with it.
Our second recommendation for Stryker would be to invest in the diagnostic imaging industry. This is a very up-and-coming industry with a lot of potential growth and profit for Stryker if they invested. The only issue with this recommendation is the end results for expansion into diagnostic imaging is limited to vertical growth.
Our final recommendation is that Stryker should acquire like companies with similar resources that expand their geographical territory. Stryker could use their excess cash to acquire similar companies instead of entering new markets. This would allow Stryker to build on their already set foundation and expand to new regions. Expanding their geographical territory would increase both sales and their customer base. When acquiring companies with similar resources, they can expand their development on new and existing products. Another perk would be providing similar products to their already existing product line. This would increase company sales because they would be able to provide alternative options in all regions. This strategy would provide a low cost and low risk option while not exhausting excess cash. If Stryker is going to adhere to one of our recommendations, we advise this is the best course of action to reassure Stryker's market share growth.
In conclusion, we had initially chosen Stryker as a struggling company from surface research revealing product recalls and lawsuits against Stryker costing them billions of dollars and a reduced accelerated growth rate over the last 3 years. More in-depth research would reveal these types of recalls are standard and expected problems facing all competitors in the industry. In the years Stryker has seen product problems costing billions of dollars, their sales and public image have actually improved. They have significantly lower and less severe recalls than their competitors. Additionally, Stryker has been previously acquiring like companies worth approximately $300 million. As it would turn out, Stryker had been strategizing to stockpile their cash for the significant announcement of the acquisition in Sage, a medical and surgical supply company valuated at close to $3 billion. This announcement made on February 1st fixes Stryker's problems of decelerating growth and expansion. Overall, Stryker is a tremendous company. They have a great work environment to their employees both domestically and internationally while producing reputable, quality medical devices. We expect them to continue on their growth path for future success. It is recommended everyone buy Stryker stock now while it is cheap at $110 per share. Thank you.